Hello everyone, this is Calvin, Professor C here. Thank you for tuning in this channel, as this channel is to aim to help new mortgage agent making more money and faster. So, do you have any client that has low credit score and you want to help them improve their credit score before applying for their mortgage? If so, this video is going to tell you a lot of tips and tricks. Stay tuned, okay? So, I guess the first tips to give you so that you can tell your client is to get a credit. To get a credit. You say, what do you mean get a credit? Well, I don't know if you have any client that you encounter that, when you do the credit bureau search and they come up with an empty bureau. And then you ask them, is it the system error or something like that? What happened? Well, to be very honest, this happened a lot in the Chinese community or even in the Asian community. So they literally do not have any credit on their, under their name. It may be a cultural thing because they would think, okay, well, if I have the cash, if I have the money, why would I borrow money? Because traditionally, Asian would treat this, the credit card and all this as a loan. Well, it is a loan, but they will treat it as if it is a borrowing, so that they avoid doing that unless they need to. And if they have money in their account or cash on their hand, then they rather use cash rather than credit card. But they do not understand that in Canada, when a bank try to evaluate the ability that you repay, your debt and how good a character you are, they have nothing to judge on, right? They see a blank piece of paper. They do not know whether you have a good repayment record or not, right? And that's very difficult for the bank to decide, okay, well, if I cannot judge them based on a $1,000 credit card or something like that, how can I, evaluate my risk to borrow like a couple $100,000 for them to buy a house, right? So this is, where the bank, the point of view come in, and so you have to understand where the bank's coming from, right? Because a lot of clients told me, well, I don't have credit card, isn't that good? Because I'm not, borrowing unnecessary money. And so now that you understand where the bank's coming from, because they have no previous record to base their judgment on, then yeah, it is better to get a credit. So the first tip is get a credit, okay? So the second tip is, it's pretty obvious. Don't be late on making the payment. Don't be late on making the payment, right? You need to pay everything on time. And in fact, I suggest you pay everything ahead of time, probably like a couple of days ahead of time. This is because that the bank sometimes need, some time to process your payment, so you may pay the bill today, but if you pay it this morning and you call the credit card center in the afternoon, they may not see the payment right away. So I suggest you pay a couple of days later, earlier than the due date, okay? And that also include the utility bills, Bell, Rogers, TELUS and all that. So those affect your credit too, even though those are not credit card, but those are important. You pay on time, okay? So the third one is, even if you have a hard time paying the full payment, right? You make sure you pay the minimum payment. When I said that on the second point that you make the payment on time, I do not mean the full payment. You don't have to make the full payment on time, but you do have to make at least the minimum payment on time. So, this might be a misconception, right? So that you do not need to make the full payment on time, but you have to make at least the minimum payment on time, okay? The fourth one is, if you are, traveling a lot, you might be, executive from a company, you go here and go there, you do not have a lot of time to pay, or you have a very busy schedule, set up a pre-authorized payment or auto payment. Most credit cards now allow you to set up a pre-authorized payment so that they take out either the full payment or the minimum payment automatically from a designated bank account. That is a good tips to remember, and that usually would save you a lot of trouble when you apply for the mortgage, because at least you're making the minimum payment on time so that you don't ruin your credit record. You just you might have to pay some interest, that's all, okay? Next one is, this one is a huge one. Never exceed the limit. What do you mean by never exceed the limit? How do you exceed the limit, you might ask, right? So say that you have a credit card with a limit of $10,000, right? So you say, well, you might be right now at $9,950, right? Still under the limit. But you have to factor in that there might be accrued interest in there. That might be happening. And so when you pull the credit bureau, you would actually see that the balance is higher than the limit. I don't know if you have a client's credit record that looks like that before. I have seen many clients that have credit report like that before. And as soon as you have anything or exceed the limit, the credit score drop a lot. And that is really bad. So don't do that. Keep it well below the limit, okay? And that brings us to the next point, is keep the percentage of usage low. Keep the percentage of usage low. What do you mean, right? What do I mean is, say that you have a 10,000, you have 3 credit cards, each of them with $10,000 limit. And every month you might just use, say, $9,000 every month, right? So if you use it, the whole $9,000 on one credit card, and when the banker is about to do your mortgage and pull your credit bureau, and it show up as $9,000 on one of your credit card and the other is 0, this credit score is usually worse than if you spend $3,000 on your first credit card, $3,000 on your second credit card, and $3,000 on your third credit card. So your credit score would usually be better on the second option, okay? So, I understand that why you would want to charge everything on one credit card, because that might be your travel credit card and you're accumulating points and all that. And that's fine. I do that too. But as soon as you know that you're about to apply for a mortgage, you're planning to buy a house or something like that, right? Then you stop doing that and change to your option 2. You do not buy a house randomly. You just don't walk into an open house and buy a house. Well, I want to buy a house. Let's put in an offer, right? You don't do that. So buying a house, you plan well ahead of time. So, make sure that you switch to your option B, spread out your spending well before you apply for the mortgage so that you maximize your credit score. Okay? Next, this is one of the tips that you should also do before you apply for a mortgage is check your credit score on your own before applying for a mortgage. So each individual, you can actually go to the credit bureau company, which is, Equifax and TransUnion, and request your own credit bureau, credit reports, right? The reason why you check your own credit before you go to the bank, you may say, because the bank, you might ask, right? Calvin, the bank would check my credit anyway, so why should I check my own credit beforehand? And the reason is because there might be a lot of, mistake on the credit bureau that you pull from the bank. Sometimes maybe your name and another person who has a similar birthday and similar name with you guys, your credit bureau might have mixed it up. There might be ID fraud that you do not know. I have a client that have, outstanding balance of $10,000 that he doesn't know. He doesn't even know that he has that credit card. Sometimes you might forgot to, pay the last payment of one of those cards that you just cancel, say a Bay card or something like that, and your last payment you might have forgotten, right? Or they might not have processed it correctly. It's not your mistake, it's maybe their mistake. But the last thing you want to do is you find out those mistakes or those problems when you are in front of the banker. If you find out well ahead of time, then you can have time to go to the credit report company and ask them to change it, to fix it, to rectify it. Go to the bank and tell them, that they made a mistake. You have your proof of payment and all that. Like, at least you have time to do that before you purchase your house, right? Because if you do not know, you cannot prepare well ahead of time. So that's important, okay? Next one is, do not apply for credit card, or do not check your credit, do not open a new bank account, do not increase your credit card limit, etc., etc. Basically, do not touch your credit bureau other than just ordering it from the credit company on your own. You better not touching it before you apply your mortgage. But more importantly, you should not touch it after you apply for the mortgage. You should not touch it until you get the key of your house. Because any change in that regard would, or may impact your application of the mortgage. So, I usually try to ask my client, I have just checked your credit. It's okay, it's perfect. But after I check your credit, please do not, go lease a car or, do something, increase your limit, all that stuff. Keep it the way it is. Because, You never know, the banker and the lender could, and they have the authority to pull another bureau right before closing, and you don't want to mess around with your credit score and your outstanding balance. So this is some of the tricks and tips that I'm going to tell you today. But I'm also going to, spend a few minutes telling you some of the misconception about credit report that I often heard, and I want to also teach you in this video also. So one of the most common misconception people have is that when I told them that, why do you have late payment 6 months ago? And they always come back and say that, well, I was busy at that time, but I already fully repaid the credit card company. I have zero balance right now. In fact, I have zero balance for the last 3 months. That is not something that is important to me and to the bank. That is not something that you can brag about, because credit report, the full name of it is credit history report. Okay, they look at the history, and if 6 months ago you are late on payment, it doesn't really matter that it's nice that you fully repay, but it's better if you're not late. I'd rather you pay on time but have outstanding balance right now at this moment than you late 2 months, 3 months ago and fully repay and have a zero balance right now. Understand? So we look at the history of your credit and not right now what's outstanding balance. Okay, so I heard a lot of people telling me that, but it's okay, don't worry about it. I was late for 2 months, I was too busy, but I'm now fully repaid. That doesn't redeem your crime. Okay. The second misconception is, I was only late for 2 days. No, man, late is late. I don't care if it is 2 days, 2 weeks, 20 days, it is late. The later it is, the worse it became. But even if you are late 2 days, it is not good. It would affect you. Okay, so just be on time, or as I always suggest, a little bit earlier than the due date, right? Maybe 3 or 4 days before the due date you pay it. That's perfect, right? And the last misconception that I always heard is, yeah, Calvin, but that's only like $20. What's the big deal? Again, we are looking at your characteristic. Late is late. I don't care if it is $20,000 or $20. It is late. So that's important. I know you might have $10,000 sitting around in your account, but if you're late on that $20 payment, that proves that you can't even make the time to pay that $20. You are not financially having a hard time paying it, but you are late on that payment, so the bank doesn't want to chase you all the time. Okay, so those are the 3 most common misconceptions about credit bureau. So I hope you learned something. Okay.